This podcast is made possible by the County of Sonoma and PG&E. Welcome to our Emergency Preparedness podcast, where you will learn valuable information for the safety of your community. My name is Xochitl Marquez, Marketing Coordinator of Sonoma Valley Community Health Center, and it is such an honor for me to introduce you to Maura Espinosa Campbell, who is the Community Engagement Manager at La Luz Center. Welcome, Maura. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you, Xochitl, for having me.
It is such a pleasure to have you. We are the lucky ones. Maura, many people know La Luz Center. They are familiar with the center because you guys are a organization that offers a lot of resources. But what not many people might know is that you are also involved in emergency preparedness, and that is the reason why we invite you here, so you can tell us a little bit more about La Luz Center's role in that area and how you help and support that community and things like that. So, Maura, can you please tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah. So at La Luz Center, our mission is to strengthen our community through various services, family services, economic advancement, and community engagement, which is my role. I'm the community engagement manager. And we recognize that there's this pressing need to support families affected by natural disasters. Ever since the 2017, when we had the fires, it became more known to us that there was not a lot of information in Spanish. So we are trying to because of our research center, we are trying to get a lot of information. And one of the things that we have created is we paired up with We Share Solar to get these suitcases that are solar powered, as well as we have our team of promotoras who help us explain and help the community get to know about what are the resources and what is needed to be prepared for emergency preparedness.
Can you tell us a little bit more about how people can get these suitcases?
Yeah, absolutely. So right now we have about 10 solar power suitcases, and the best way to obtain one is to call La Luz at 707-598-5131, and they can reach out and ask for myself, for Maura Espinosa, and I can help them do the paperwork to lend it to them, and they can borrow it for as long as they need. So if there is an emergency that they would need it for various weeks, that is definitely okay. Our goal is to also share the community that these solar-powered suitcases exist. So if there's families that live in an apartment complex, maybe we can loan them to the apartment complex, and they can have those stations already ready for the community that lives in that area.
That is such a great help, Maura, because I just realized that we don't know how blessed we are with the things that we have on a daily basis, right? Such as electricity or power. But we realized how basic these needs are until we don't have them. So I think it's a big relief for our community to know that there are resources like that can support especially the more vulnerable. And I also had the opportunity to be at one of the presentations that Las Promotoras showed, and it was, I believe it was at Aliados Health, and I found it to be very simple, yet very creative, interactive, and overall important. So can you please, I would like to talk a little bit more about that presentation, and if you could please tell us a little bit more about it. We can probably start with a few questions, such as, why is it so important to be prepared, and how can we be prepared?
Yeah, so our luchadoras have built this presentation, and as you mentioned, it is simple because we're not trying to overwhelm the community. Exactly. We're trying to make it as easy as possible and for them to feel comfortable that they can use material that they have at home rather than go purchase these expensive backpacks or tubs of emergency preparedness equipment. Anything that that you can think of, you could potentially find at home, and also because there's a lot of families that may be diabetic or may need medication. So for them to have just an ongoing list of materials that they need is very important. So I think that the presentation narrows it down to the people to make sure that they have the material they need at hand, firsthand. So we identify what the community will be needing in a family sense. So like the family, what do they need? And as well as they create this kit that they can leave it somewhere nearby where they can just carry it with them and take it home, take it outside of the home. But the presentation really does help them understand to put into practice, because we don't know when really it's going to hit. So put into practice, like if it happens and when it happens, we'll be prepared to actually take action. So it's really more of the access to be ready to take action on that plan.
And Maura, I really like the presentation because most of us, to be honest with you, are not that receptive to listen to information regarding emergency preparedness. We think that in a certain way it can be difficult or even boring, or I have come to understand that at least we as Hispanics, I don't know about others, we think that the fact that if we don't touch the subject and we don't talk about it is because it's not going to happen, right?
Yes.
Or it can happen to others, but not to me. And just so our audience know, a few minutes before we started recording this, we had an earthquake, right? So
Yes.
those things happen. We just need to be prepared. And that information that Las Luchadoras present is basic, yet make a very important difference at the time of an emergency. One of the things that I was learning here is like the importance of preparedness. Many people think that we can be lucky, or says, "Oh, you were so lucky that it didn't happen to you. You were so lucky that you are okay." But it's not about luck; it's about being prepared.
Yes. And I feel like a lot of families sometimes, or even include myself, like I wasn't prepared. And recently, because I'm diabetic, so I have to make sure that I have my week's medication if in case something were to happen. That's when I started to prepare myself and the kids for my parents and families. So I tell my family, like, what is it that you guys, who are you going to call, who are you going to let them know that you're safe. As you mentioned, we had the earthquake. The first thing my mom did is she called me. She's like, are you okay, are you safe? And I think it's because, like you mentioned, we think it's not going to happen to us, but with this unstable weather, it's been so drastic due to climate change. I do think that being prepared and encourage our community to be aware and be prepared, and we've had some examples already. And I think that now that we have the material to go off of to provide them with useful resources and tools, that they can start practicing to be that prepared. So one of the things that the promotoras have been helping and during the presentation is we can sit with them and teach them about their zones, where the people live, if it's an emergency evacuation or if it's a voluntary evacuation. And there's a big difference between the both. I know that what I've heard is that when firefighters do prefer if it's voluntary for you to evacuate, but it's not, it's voluntary at the moment because it hasn't hit you yet. But knowing the differences in the language that the community, that the county is using is very important as well.
Of course. I think how do you say that? We can alleviate or make the process a little bit easier if we know what we're doing. The other day we had a different host, a different organization, but we were talking about how some people in the fires that we had in 2017, they were evacuating, but they were not supposed to. They didn't know their zone. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that, how to know your zone. And unfortunately, they created more traffic, right? So those little things that can actually make a difference. And I think one of the other key points for us will be to identify the common emergencies that we have in our area. Because, for example, we do not have tornadoes, right? Or in Mexico, where I am from, we had a lot of earthquakes. And what are the most common type of emergencies or disasters that we have in the area, Maura?
Yeah, and that's one of the key points during the presentation. The promotoras asked the community, what do you think are the most... what are the disasters that do come to the Valley of Sonoma? And for sure, we've had the experience of the wildfires, as you mentioned, earthquake a few minutes ago. But we also are very prone to flooding and power outages due to these emergencies. So one of the things that we really have to let the community know is know your the information from PG&E. So we share them how to go into the website and check for their zip code if there's going to be a power outage due to certain storms, because 2-3 weeks ago we had the big storm that came, and luckily this area, most of it wasn't affected by the power outages, but it tends to happen. So being prepared so they can know, oh, there will be a power outage or there will be a storm, let me go get a power suitcase from La Luz, and that way I can be prepared for this power outage. And then because we live in a time where our cell phone really is become our full communication device, having your cell phone fully charged, and ensuring that we have access to Wi-Fi or internet may not be easy during these power outages. So it can be really hard for some communication. So that's where our suitcase come in, is where we can charge our cell phones or tablets to make sure that there's communication between the families and the community.
Thank you, Maura. You mentioned something really important, a key word that is being prepared. And you also mentioned PG&E as one of the resources of information, which is very important to know that those resources of information are actually giving you the right information. Because sometimes we can check our Facebook pages, right? And unfortunately, that is not that reliable all the time, because we might have misleading information. I mean, if it is the only resource that we have at the moment, that's okay. But there are so many other websites and apps that can help us, and that we will know for sure that is valid information. Can you mention to us some of those resources that our audience can check out?
I think one of the most important ones, and the one that I like to give out first, is Nixle, which you can text 888-777, and you can select the language that you want. So if you want it in Spanish or English, but you can also add your zip code. So I live in Sebastopol and commute to the Sonoma Valley to work. So I added both Sebastopol, Petaluma, and Sonoma Valley. So you can get notifications of like the areas that if there's an accident, if there's a power outage, or if there's going to be road closures. But another one that is really good is definitely registering to PG&E to get those notifications, as well as there's an app called Watch Duty, and that one has more updated information of the fires happening, and if there's going to be a control fire versus if something just started and it could lead to a bigger wildfire. And then ready.gov is one of them, and knowing your zone. So the Sonoma County has put out the Know Your Zone, and we can help, at La Luz, we can help you navigate these websites to kind of get you familiarized, as well as play around it with your device. So if you bring your tablet, your phone, or whatever device you're going to be using to get notified, we can help you set up the information so it comes directly to the device that you're comfortable with.
Maura, I am so relieved to hear this, because as many people, and not probably adolescents, I mean, I can tell you that my 6-year-old teaches me how to use my own phone. But we have other people, right, like seniors or people that even do not know how to read or speak a dialect. So I am so happy that you do help these people who do not know how to probably work a device, or probably some of them know how to do it, but just the very simple stuff. And the fact that you mentioned that you can help them or teach them how to probably, if it is an application, how to add that app for them to receive the messages, that is wonderful. And I know las luchadoras, or promotoras, when they have these presentations, they help the community. But can someone just go and stop by at La Luz and request that service from you?
Definitely, they can just come to La Luz, and we have our advocates there ready, so they can be the ones that help them one-on-one. But it's very important, and we as La Luz want families and people to ask for these services, because they may have more than one question. So not only about the emergency preparedness, but they might have not known about the solar suitcases. So we can give them the full list of resources that they could potentially be needing. We also have worked with the county to do the presentation, and we have the list of what is the material that is needed to put in a backpack to be ready when you're going to evacuate. So it is definitely we welcome everyone to come to La Luz. If they feel a little nervous about coming, would like to set up an appointment, they can definitely give us a call, and we will give the right adequate person to help them. With that, it's just very crucial for families to understand. Like sometimes you don't have to call 911 when you have this emergency. There is another phone number that they can call. They can call 211, and it does come in Spanish. They can go through the options to make sure that it's in Spanish, but that's all virtual. So sometimes when you just want that person to sit with you and just go through it, definitely La Luz is the place to go.
Thank you, Maura. And I think it is also crucial that once you know that information, to pass along that information, right? The other day we were talking about a phrase that says that information is power, but then someone said it's probably more like potential power, because once you take it into practice, into action, that's when the real power comes. And unfortunately, our frontliners, is that how you call them? They cannot do, yeah, frontline. Yes, they cannot do it all. To be honest with you, for the longest time, for me, working at the Sonoma Valley Community Health Center and doing these emergency presentations was like an eye opener, because for so long I thought that just by calling 911, it was like a superhero was going to appear and rescue me. You know, I always thought that that was the way to do it, and now I understand that it is my responsibility to do my part. And the more I work, or the more informed and the more knowledgeable I am about in this case, emergency preparedness, we can help that way to our first responders, because they have to take care of the bigger matters, right? And with that, Maura, I know that there are three methods for a good family planning. We have to have a plan, right, yes, in place. I think the more prepared we are, talking about preparedness, the greater the chances for us to be okay after an emergency. So I would like to base my these three methods in communication, identification, and practice. Can we talk a little bit more about the importance of communication and how can we establish that emergency plan?
Yeah, we definitely, for communication, we learned during the fires of 2017 that we weren't prepared at all. We didn't have the method of communication, like between the county and the community. We didn't have a method of communication to fully put that plan into action. So establishing an emergency plan with your family, with your neighbors, the holidays are here. You mentioned earlier, why don't we go give them a little box of homemade cookies and get to know your neighbor and kind of just bring it up, like what do we do in case of an emergency, and just building that, establishing with your community of this method of emergency preparedness. Knowing phone numbers right now, like I said, we do rely so much on our cell phone, but it is important for us to memorize 1 to 2 numbers just to let know our families, like, I'm safe, I'm here. Sometimes it may be a family member out of the area, may not be living here in California with you, but might be in another state or country. As well as getting to know and memorize certain websites that, if you may not have access to with your phone, but eventually have access to the library and you start doing research, knowing which websites to go through to know the expectation of how it's getting better with the emergency situation. We do also helping identifying like the routes that you're going to do or meeting points. Sometimes our families, we're working, we're not at home when the emergency happens. So it is important to know, like, where do we go? Is it the McDonald's near the corner of our house or the school that's near our house, to meet there if in case we're not together. And then let other people know your plan. So if you have a close group of friends, like, we've built an emergency preparedness plan. This is what ours looks like. How about yours? And just getting to know other people's plan to know if and when it happens, you are aware of, I knew my friend told me this, so maybe she'll be safe. She's safe over there with her family. Also, putting to practice is very important. So, knowing your plan, maybe having one day where you practice these drills and, say, hey, I know we're having a family sit down dinner, but we're also going to go through what our emergency plan looks like. It's very important because once you practice it, it's kind of like an instrument. If you're practicing it, it just feels natural to you. So, if you practice these methods and you communicate with your family what you're going to be doing, it will come natural when the disaster happens. And when these emergencies happen, we do go under a lot of stress and we could panic, but knowing that you have a plan and knowing that you're already stabilized with your family, what the action plan will be, it will help you alleviate that anxiety.
Yes, Maura. And there are so many resources. The other day when we were talking to one of the organizations, I thought to myself, wow, I do not need to reinvent the wheel. All the information is already there. And I know that you as an organization have packages, right? It's a Ready California or something like that, when it tells you like step by step what your go bag needs to have, what it needs to include, how much water, how much food, and there are so many resources on a website. You mentioned some of them, and we will be more than happy to add those to at the end of the video so people can just access it in like quickly. But one of the things that gives us hope is that there is already a plan. We just have to follow it. And of course, always having in mind that my plan probably doesn't fit yours. Our families are different, our situations are different. Yeah. But there is kind of like more like a general guide, right, for us to create that. You mentioned something important that we need to practice it. I remember I left Napa because I was living Sonoma at that time in July and then of 2017, and then in October was when the fires happened. And so I wasn't here. I was in Utah, but my sister was here, and I remember her calling us because everybody was lost. I have more family members here, but they couldn't get in touch with each other. So it seems like I don't know what happened with the lines. But you were so right. And we were so scared because we knew that some family members were lost per se. I mean, they were not in reality, but we thought because they couldn't communicate among each other, and we didn't have a plan. And being in Utah, away from them, and not being able to help them, I was so scared.
Yeah, you don't know what's going to happen. And like you said, you're far away. But when these practices come into play and we have this communication of what the plan will be, I think that that alleviates. It's like we talked about it. We know what's going to happen, and we're going through to it. So we just have to be patient until that phone call does come up.
Mm-hmm. That is true. Yeah. And as we mentioned before, there are simple steps that can make a big difference at the time of an emergency. And one of them is prepare a go bag. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. For the go bag, it's definitely important to have any material that you immediately will need. And how I've done it before, and based on what we've here on this presentation, it's for a couple of days, for about a week. So any important documents, so even if you have to make a photocopy of your ID, passport, or any important documents, titles, deeds, it is very important to make those copies and have it ready in your go bag. It's also very important to have cash available, because there may be times where we rely so much with Apple Pay or Google Pay or our credit cards, but the systems may be down due to power outages. So it's important to have a little bit of cash stashed up. When it is better to also have $1 to $5 bills, the smaller the better. And as well as mapping your neighborhood, getting to know the area where you're going to be at or where you live, to know what routes you could be taking or alternative routes that you would be using if there's some road closures. With that, as I mentioned, I'm diabetic, so I tend to put my medication or medication list just in case I have to take insulin. So obviously I'm not putting that in my go bag because it's refrigerated. But I have the list just in case I have to go to the doctor's in emergency to get certain material ready. And then like you said, we have the guides in English and Spanish at La Luz, so people can pick this up to have the guideline of what other material may come. If you have little kids, it is important for them to have not only just a little bit of extra clothes, but potentially a little stuffed animal or a little toy that will help them cope during these hard times. Masks, phone charger, keys to your house, wallet, any other types of chargers that you may be needing for your devices. And it's also important to have a portable radio if you can find one, as well as a flashlight and first aid kit supplies. And there's some more in list that we can give at La Luz as well. So if you want other ideas, we can also go through it with at La Luz, and I can give you a list.
Thank you so much, Laura. I think it's just putting there the basic stuff, right? Things that we know that will help us in an emergency. Plus, as you said, depending on our circumstances, we can add more things in there. And what will be the difference between that and a stay box?
The stay box is mostly like if you have food material, so it's a little bit heftier. It's a box of like toiletries, toilet paper, food, and that one is it's garbage bags, any material that you may be needing to camp out if you can't go back to your house, and any potentially important documents that didn't fit in your go bag. But that is mainly the difference. The box is mostly the material that you need if you need to stay camping out for a while. And I like camping, so I actually have mine ready. So I can either take it camping or I just leave it there next to my emergency backpack. So I know they're together. We can just pull it, wheel it out. Literally has wheels on it. And the boxes are inexpensive. They can be, you can get one simple box for the tote bag that you could just carry out with you.
And I think, Maura, I am sorry to interrupt you. But like for the go backs, it was my understanding is usually like for 3 days, right?
Yeah.
You try to take things for three days. And then those stay box, they can also have, sometimes depending on the emergency, we either need to leave but we need to stay, like what happened with COVID-19. So those boxes can actually help us too if we need to stay home. Right? Yes. So we just need to plan for probably a week of food and water and other things that we might need in case that we cannot leave the house for a period of time.
Right.
Maura, I know we already mentioned a little bit about this, but how can we help our friends and our neighbors to prepare as well?
I think it's really important if you have a conversation with them and just plan with them. It could be casual, just having, little wine, hanging out, or having a dinner and just letting them know, like, we should just be prepared and having these examples, like, it's happened before. So we're not saying it's not going to happen. Great if it doesn't happen, but it is better to be prepared. So having that open conversation, who's home during the day, who they can go to, or like I mentioned before, that point where we can meet. So knowing like, they're not home because they were at work, so they're probably going to be meeting us at this point. Having that open conversation just so they know where to look for the family member.
Those are great points, Maura. The other thing that I noticed is that when you start talking about it, you don't want to feel left behind. I don't know if I'm explaining myself well.
Yes.
It's like right now that I'm learning about all this, and it's been constant, interviewing one organization after another. I am like, I need to go, and for Christmas, we need to talk about emergency preparedness, and probably I am the one, but the fact of talking so much about it, it's kind of like telling me, hey, Xochitl, you need to be prepared. So the more we talk about it, I think it's a great way for us to invite others to do the same, which is what you explained a little bit ago.
Yeah, it becomes more natural. So if you're having the conversation over, like I mentioned, dinner or something, like, what would you do? Like it's like an icebreaker. Like, what would you do in case of an emergency? But like you mentioned, once you're already dived into that conversation, you're into it. And maybe you will go home and you're like, I have a cat and I have to potentially prepare for that little animal to evacuate with me. So how does that look like? And just bringing that spark to your friends and neighbors, and look, family members is really important. So there's that, they're ready for it. So like you said, if you take action or you start talking about it, everyone else be like, no, I want to be part of it and I want to be ready too. And I really like the Ready California slogan because it's true. It's like, we're a whole community, and wherever you go, I remember because I was at San Francisco when the 2017 fires happened, and my family lived in Petaluma, and they're like, no, don't come here. like, just stay in San Francisco now. And I felt so awkward. I was like, no, I need to know where you guys, and if you're safe, it's like, well, we know you're at the university, so don't move. Unless, they tell you to evacuate, then we'll figure something out. But I think it's really important because that way your family members, there's this sense of calmness. Because even though, like I mentioned earlier, even though you probably will not have a conversation or will not get in touch with them in several days, they know you're safe. They know that was the plan. The plan was for you to stay put, or you're going to be staying at this location.
And not only that, Maura, but also have like different plans, right? Because sometimes we think that our perfect plan A will work, and sometimes the scenario is so different. So creating a plan based on different scenarios could be a great idea.
That's true.
Maura, I know we mentioned so many things. I think we could, as you mentioned before, spend the whole day talking about emergency preparedness. But what will be a piece of advice that you would like our listeners from the Sonoma Valley to take away from this conversation?
I think really good. I would like for our community that is local to come and reach out to La Luz, and just come to look at our services to see because we can do one-on-one conversations of how they can be prepared, and come up with give them these ideas and support. So we're located at Boys Hot Springs, and they can give us a call if they feel more comfortable at our 707-598-5131. And just having that one-on-one conversation, if they see the promotoras out in our community, approaching them, and they're very nice people, they're just going to be there ready to help you. Even if you have, a question about how do I do this? Because like you mentioned, we have different age groups that own different devices and changing, systems. So I think it's very important for people to know that La Luz is their home, and it is a community-based organization. So we're here, and when we do events and everything, our goal is to make sure that this community becomes stronger.
Thank you, Maura. I think you have already reached your goal, because when you mentioned that you want the community to know that the La Luz Center is their home, it truly feels like that. I had the opportunity to volunteer a long time ago, and the fact that I work at the Sonoma Valley Community Health Center and work alongside with you as an organization, it has truly been a blessing to me, and I know to my team as well. We want to acknowledge you for all you do, because you truly do a lot, and I know that many of these things couldn't be accomplished without your help. I truly appreciate it. You guys are a really good team. Everybody, has a great contribution to it, and now Las Luchadoras as promotoras are doing a great job, and yourself and Sonia, and I know I'm forgetting other people, but I truly appreciate your work. It truly, as I mentioned before, I think you have already reached your goal. So many people see you as a great resource center, and you are very well known, and I'm so happy to have you here and had the opportunity to talk to you about emergency preparedness.
Thank you, Xochitl. It was a pleasure talking to them, and I'm really looking forward to reaching out to the community and talking to more people about the emergency boxes. So whenever they feel ready that this is something they may be needing, come reach out and look for us at La Luz.
We'll make sure that we have your information at the end of this video, so it's easier for them to contact you. Thank you so much, Maura. Such a pleasure.
Thank you.